So, one of my lovely subscribers has a daughter named Tiger Lily, who I hear is turning 10, and so I've been asked to do some middle grade book recommendations, and I actually love reading middle grade literature, so I was super happy to film this video for you. So happy birthday, Tiger Lily, this one is for you. So I'm going to start off with what I consider to be the classic middle grade fantasy read, which is The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, which a lot of people may not know that this was actually written as a middle grade book, and in fact I did read it when I was about 9 or 10, and I think that it's pretty perfect for that age group. This looks like it's quite a big book, but this is an illustrated version, and it is quite a long book, and it is written in a very old writing style because it was written in 1937. So the writing style is a little bit on the older side, but I still recommend it because it's a sweet story about a hobbit who goes on an adventure and discovers things about himself and about the world that he lives in that he didn't realise before. And it also leads on to what is arguably the grandfather of modern fantasy, which is the Lord of the Rings. So this is a good way to start in Middle-earth if you would like to. Moving on now to one that barely needs mentioning at all, but Harry Potter is, of course, a great start for a middle grade reader in fantasy. I have the Portuguese copy here just because it was the easiest one for me to grab from my shelves, but it's super popular for a reason. The first, I would say, at least 2, if not 3 books are perfect for the middle grade reader, but the great thing about this series is it grows with its audience. So by the time you get to the end of the series, you're pretty much in the range of late young adult, early adult books in terms of themes. So this one really grows with its readers, and I'm not even going to bother telling you what it's about because doesn't need to be said really, does it? Another classic in middle grade fantasy is the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman, starting with The Northern Lights, followed by The Subtle Knife and The Amber Spyglass. This is one of those very unique series that has subtle adult themes running through it that you don't notice until you're older. So it's perfect for a middle grade reader. It follows a character named Lyra Belacqua and her demon, Pantalaimon. Demons being the manifestation of a person's soul outside of their body as they go on an adventure and discover the world and the magic that surrounds them. And I read this one when I was around 10 or 11 as well. I think it's an absolute staple for that kind of age range, and I highly, highly recommend it. Moving on to a couple of books that aren't necessarily widely considered when you think about the middle grade fiction genre, but these are a couple that I particularly enjoyed when I was a much younger reader. And firstly, we have The Wind Singer, which is by William Nicholson and is book 1 in the Wind on Fire trilogy. This is another trilogy that is a little bit on the dark side, and I definitely picked up on that when I read it originally at around the age of 11 or 12. I think that it's dark in a creepy way, not dark in a concerning way, so I do still recommend this for young readers. I'm actually just going to read the short excerpt from the back of the book because I think it does a pretty good job of explaining the world that this story is set in. So it reads, "I hate school, I hate ratings, I won't reach higher, I won't strive harder, I won't make tomorrow better than today, pongo to exams." So it's about a girl and her brother who don't want to conform to the society that they've been raised in, especially as it punishes those who want more for themselves. And so her and her brother go on a mission to find the source of the evil that is causing the world that they live in. And I just think that this book is absolutely fantastic, and I don't ever hear anybody talk about it, but I just loved this book when I was younger, and I reread it multiple times, and I'm actually thinking I should reread it now because I think that it's still a great book. And like I say, it's a little bit on the darker, more thoughtful side, but definitely still well worth a go, I think. If you fancy something a little bit more solidly in the classic fantasy genre, then Eragon, The Inheritance Cycle by Christopher Paolini is a pretty good choice. As the cover would suggest, this story follows a dragon and the dragon's dragon rider, and this is a very trope-heavy fantasy series. I don't think I've actually finished the series yet, although I'm planning to. It's not the best written thing ever, and I think if you are in the 9 to 13 age range, you will probably love this. If you're in the adult reading range, this book hasn't aged particularly well, but if you're a young reader starting to get into fantasy, I still think that this is a great book. I just think that for adults, you need to have that nostalgia there to still enjoy it. Moving on to a couple of books that I have mentioned quite a number of times on my channel, and which both have a theme of people who can see, hear and speak to ghosts. We have the one and only original, in my view, The Mediator series by Meg Cabot, and City of Ghosts, the Cassidy Blake series by Victoria Schwab. I've mentioned before, and I'll say it again, these books are super close in terms of themes. In this one, we follow Susanna Simon, who can see, hear and speak to ghosts and kick a little ghost butt if she needs to, and she moves to California with her mum to move in with her mum's new husband, and she discovers that there's a ghost living in her bedroom, and each book has its own arc because each book has its own little story in it, and I just absolutely adored these when I was like 11 or 12, and I still think they're fantastic. I've been rereading them this year and I still think that they're great, and I highly recommend them. Then if you want a more modern take on what is essentially the exact same story, you have City of Ghosts by Victoria Schwab, which follows a girl who can see, hear and speak to ghosts and kick a little ghost butt if she needs to, and she has a ghost best friend. Cassidy's parents, believe it or not, are ghost hunters, and they are travelling around the world during Cassidy's summer holidays from school to various haunted places to film for their new documentary, and Cassidy goes with them and gets into all sorts of trouble because of course they're visiting haunted places and therefore there are ghosts which she has to deal with. And I think that this is a really great modern version of The Mediator. I still love The Mediator, but this one is great too. Moving on now to a couple of books that are a little bit more on the mythology based side. So first up we have The Alchemist by Michael Scott, the Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel series, and as the name of the series would indicate, this follows the mythology surrounding Nicholas Flamel and the Philosopher's Stone. So almost like the origin story for the original Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone book. So if you're familiar with the story in Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and Nicholas Flamel and Albus Dumbledore, Dumbledore is not in this story, but Flamel and his wife Perenelle are. But what's really interesting about this particular series is that it draws in a lot of other mythologies as well. So, for example, Medusa shows up in this at some point, and it's also tied to the next book that I'm going to talk about, which is The Twisted Tree by Rachel Burge, because the Tree of Life that appears in The Alchemist also appears in The Twisted Tree, as you might imagine. This book is actually based on Norse mythology. So in this we follow a character named Martha, who unfortunately has lost the vision in one of her eyes, and ever since that happened she's been experiencing strange things, because when she touches people's clothes she starts to understand things about their personality, things that they have not told her. So she decides to go and visit her grandmother in Norway to try and discover what it is that's going wrong, because she lost her vision in her eye following an accident falling from the twisted tree. Unfortunately, when she gets to Norway, she discovers that her grandmother has passed away and a strange boy has moved into her house. This book is quite creepy. So you'd only want to read this one if you are looking for that sort of creepy, slightly horror-ish vibe. I found it creepy, but I'm a wimp. So that's not an indication that it's not appropriate for a middle grade reader. It's just an indication that I'm a wimp. This, I think, is technically marketed in the young adult section, and I think a few of these actually are, but I think that they're completely appropriate for younger readers too. There's no graphic content or anything. The writing style is potentially a little bit on the more advanced side, but I don't necessarily see that as a problem. And if you like mythology, I think that these two are pretty great for that. Next, I wanted to include a manga on this list. Most of the manga I read are not appropriate for a middle grade audience because they are either sexually explicit or they have violence in the extreme depicted within them. For example, Full Metal Alchemist, which has some pretty gruesome scenes if we're being honest. But Flying Witch by Chihiro Ishizuka is pretty perfect for a middle grade audience, I think. It follows Makoto and her black cat familiar as they move in with her cousin so that she can complete her witch training, and it's just a series of short stories. Each chapter is its own little story following Makoto and her life and her witch training, and it's just very, very cute, and it's a nice easy manga to read, so I think it's really great if that's a genre that you're interested in getting into. Then I think that this is a fabulous one, whether you're a middle grade reader, a young adult reader, or an adult reader. I think this one's very cute and easy to read. I also really wanted to include a science fiction book in this list, and honestly I'm not overly familiar with a whole lot of middle grade science fiction, so if you know of any, please do leave them down below. But I have picked The Starlight Watchmaker by Lauren James. Again, this is one that is sold in the young adult section, but I think it's completely appropriate for a middle grade reader. It follows a robot named Hugo who doesn't have any friends, but throughout the course of the story he starts to make some friends, and he and his friends are investigating a mystery. And I think what's really interesting in particular about this story is that none of the characters are human, so they are all either alien or mechanical. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It's very, very short, and the font and spacing is very, very large, and this is just such a lovely story of friendship in a sci-fi setting with non-human characters and a little bit of mystery and intrigue, and I think honestly it's a perfect book for middle grade readers, and I don't know why they don't sell it in the middle grade section too, because I think it's fabulous. Finally, I have a couple of the more mainstream modern options. First, we have The Wizards of Once by Cressida Cowell. I specifically refer to this first book. There is a second book in this series so far. I don't know if it's going to be a series or a trilogy. I wasn't quite so keen on the second book as I was on the first, but that's just me. Perhaps I just didn't read the second book at the right time. I don't know, but I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's definitely well placed in the middle grade age range, and there's also graphics throughout the book that Cressida Cowell herself draws, I believe, and also some of the font choices are really interesting. So we have pixies in this world and giants, so the font for the pixies when they speak is in small font, and when the giants speak it's in big font because giants are big and pixies are small. So that's really, really cute and a little addition to the book that makes it super interactive. So I think it's pretty good for the early part of the middle grade age range. So in this, we have wizards and we have warriors, and the wizards are in hiding and the warriors chased them away because they don't like each other very much. But when a young wizard and a young warrior meet and become unlikely friends, they band together to defeat a common enemy. And like I said, this is just really cute and whimsical. There's a lot of morals in this story. There's a lot about how to be a good person and how to make difficult decisions in difficult situations. I was really impressed with the way that Cressida Cowell didn't shy away from some slightly more difficult to talk about topics like loss, and I really appreciated that, and I think that there's a lot to gain by reading this book. And then finally we have Nevermore by Jessica Townsend, the first book in the Trials of Morrigan Crow series or trilogy, I'm not sure which. And again, this is a slightly more modern middle grade book which I read for the first time last year and really, really enjoyed. We follow a character named Morrigan Crow, perhaps unsurprisingly, who is cursed to die on her 11th birthday. But when a strange man from a magical school shows up to rescue her, things in Morrigan's life quickly change and she is whisked off to take part in a competition to earn a space in a magical school. I haven't read the sequel Wondersmith yet, but it is out and it is available in paperback, which is why I now have a copy of it. So I'm really looking forward to picking that one up. But I really enjoyed Nevermore. I think it's really well written, and again, it deals with some slightly heavier themes but in a delicate way. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed this one. I also thought that it would be fun for me to tell you about a few middle grade books that I have on my TBR. So these are books that I want to read but I haven't got to yet. The first one I actually have a copy of, which is The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill, which is about a witch who protects a town, and the town give her babies in payment for her protection, and she gifts these babies with starlight before they go to their new homes. But one day she accidentally feeds one of these children moonlight instead of starlight, and therefore that child will now have magical powers. So the witch decides to raise that child as her own, and that's who we follow in this story. Like I said, I haven't read it yet, but the premise just sounds so sweet and whimsical, and I'm really looking forward to getting to it. The next is The Dreadful Tale of Prosper Redding by Alexandra Bracken, which is a story about a boy named Prosper Redding who discovers that he is possessed by a demon because of something that a many great grandfathers ago did, and this demon is going to potentially cause a lot of problems, but Prosper has to try and avoid that situation. And I mean, I don't know too much about this one, but it sounds ominous and a little bit different, and I like that in a book, and it's just one that I've heard a lot of really great things about, so I'm super interested to pick it up. Then we have the Secret of the Lost Cities series by Shannon Messenger, which I've been recommended many times, and it is on my list, I promise, and I may be getting to it reasonably soon. Maybe. And this, by all accounts, sounds a little bit Harry Potter-esque. So we have a character who thinks that she's a little bit strange because she has telepathic abilities, but then she meets somebody who is also a telepath and discovers that maybe she doesn't belong in the place that she's grown up all her life, and maybe there's somewhere that she will fit in. And by all accounts, this also seems like a story of friendship, which I personally love. I love reading about friendships and the development of friendships and friendships surviving hard times. I love all of that stuff, and I think that this series is going to do just that, so I'm definitely keen to pick this one up. And then finally we have Furthermore by Tahereh Mafi, which again, I don't know a whole lot about, but I'm pretty sure it's an Alice in Wonderland reimagining, which frankly, that's enough for me because I haven't actually read any Alice in Wonderland reimaginings, but I feel like I could really enjoy something like that, so it's on this list. I am interested to pick it up, and if I'm being perfectly honest, the cover helps sell it to me because the cover, as I'm sure you'll agree, is pretty gorgeous. So those are some middle grade books that I recommend, as well as some that I still want to get to. If you have any middle grade recommendations, then please do leave them down below. I'd love to hear about them, and I'm sure all of you would love to hear about them as well. Happy birthday once again to Tiger Lily, and that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks! Bye!